Welcome back to GMT with me, David Eads. Now, over a decade since Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans, it's been remembered with, well, an unusual, rather fascinating art project. It centres on the creation of 5 bells cast from the weather graphs in the shape of the moving hurricane itself. The bells are going to be taken to New Orleans and then struck in the sequence of their shapes by local musicians who actually experienced the tragedy. And the artist is Peter Shenai, and he is with me now with bells as well. Peter, thanks very much for joining us. Let's just, I suppose the first thing we should do is get a flavour of the bells and the sound, and then talk a bit about how this all came to be.
Sure, absolutely. So I've brought the 5 bells that, that make up the whole kind of musical instrument. So this is Bell 5. It actually represents the moment at which the hurricane struck into New Orleans at 6 a.m. on the 29th of August 2005.
That's the tolling moment. And you've got another one. Can we get one more of those? So just to get a flavour of the range of the sounds. So this is bell number...
This is bell number 3. So this was noon on the 28th of August.
Right, lovely resonance. That's obviously partly due to the bronze you're using in that. But now let's talk about, obviously, the shapes are bizarre, except when you know why they're shaped the way they are. So explain that and how that came together.
Sure. So I was speaking to climate physicists a while back on the kind of tail end of another project, and I started to realise that there was this artistic potential in matching the cyclonic forms of a hurricane to bell. Casting those cyclones as a bell would work as a musical instrument.
So that is the sort of reincarnation of the diagrammatic form of the hurricane, and in that case, at the moment it struck.
Exactly. So a hurricane can be thought of as a kind of concentric, almost kind of Russian doll style, like nesting set of wind sheets. And what we did is we tracked one wind sheet through time, chose 5 points along that time, and then used those as our models, and you can see them here.
Yeah, and so we've got that slightly haunting, very pure sound that's coming out of the bells themselves. What are you doing with them? I mean, what is that, beyond making that sound, what are you doing with them?
Well, I'm working with a musician called Byron Wallen, who's a jazz musician. He often incorporates the sort of more traditional sort of ensemble and repertoire of jazz, and he combines it with the gamelan gong instruments of Southeast Asia. So when I started speaking to him, we had these very excited conversations about bringing in the language and the music of New Orleans and combining it with these bells to kind of create some quite mysterious sounds. We don't exactly know what it's going to sound like. We're exploring that at the moment.
So you're going to bring in, courtesy of this, perhaps a new sound for New Orleans to start playing with?
Well, totally. So the bells are actually travelling to New Orleans in a few days' time, and we're really interested to hear. I'm really interested to hear kind of what the musical culture there is going to do with them, how they're going to respond, how they're going to play them, what they're going to talk about, and the memories that they'll kind of bring up. And all of that will kind of inform the musical direction of the project and kind of how the whole project is shown.
Now, it's interesting for you, Peter, in as much as, I mean, you're an artist, but you're not from New Orleans. You don't know the place terribly well. So what was the moment that went, that's something for me?
Well, it was a kind of artistic process in which I was kind of just making one association to the next. I first thought, OK, maybe I could turn a hurricane into bells. And as it so happened, the best data that we have is for Hurricane Katrina. And then, as it so happens, Hurricane Katrina hit into New Orleans, and there's this musical tradition, so it kind of all panned out.
And the long and the short is the 5 bells. Thank you very much for bringing them in to show us here, and we look forward to the composition.
Thanks very much.
Peter, thank you very much indeed.